Hi, welcome to the Life's Worth Living podcast. I'm your host, John Gossett. We'd like to thank our sponsor tonight, GTM Builders, for making this podcast possible, allowing us to record in their beautiful model home. If you're in the market for a new home, check out GTM Builders or visit one of their model homes in Tooele County. Tonight's episode is brought to you by A. Warner Homes. If you're looking for a new home or looking to sell, reach out to A. Warner Homes Real Estate for all your real estate needs. They've got a special that I wanted to mention to you tonight. If you're a first responder or a veteran and you're looking at buying a home, A. Warner Homes is going to pay for your appraisal and your home inspection if you mention this ad that you saw on Life's Worth Living podcast. Reach out to A. Warner Homes for your real estate needs at 801-867-5078. Well, I'm excited about tonight's podcast. We've got a really fun podcast planned for you tonight. I met this man in 2014, and gosh, it seems like I've known you my whole life. Our wives don't allow us to hang out all that often because we can get into some trouble when we're together, but I am really excited to share kind of a little backstory and tell you a little bit about a veterans monument that we unveiled in 2018 on Veterans Day. And the man I'm sitting with is sculptor Dan Snarr.
Hi,
not
John.
to be confused with the mayor Dan Snarr, because that seems like every time we've been on the radio or done anything, they always say, "Are you related to the mayor of Murray?"
And yes, I am.
And yes, he is. His father and your father were fathers, I think, or something to that effect.
Both our fathers were fathers. And we were, I think his great-grandfather and my great-grandfather were brothers or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so tonight, I want to talk a little bit about Dan Snarr. So, I know a lot about Dan Snarr. Not the mayor. No. We're not gonna keep this political. We're gonna we're gonna talk about the amazing sculptor Dan Snarr.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, Dan Snarr, the sculptor, wasn't always a sculptor, and I know a lot of the stories about your past. So I'm gonna kind of prep these guys and let them know. Dan was a bull rider and a really good bull rider. Dan not only was into rodeos, Dan actually went to Africa and operated a gold mine.
Yep.
Gold and diamond, right?
Yep, gold and diamond.
Gold
mine.
and diamond. Yep. So like if you're digging for gold and you don't find gold, you might find a diamond. Now you're a gold and diamond mine. I like that. Yep. And I've heard some of those stories, the rodeo stories. You also braided
bull ropes.
Bull ropes.
Yep.
Which is kind of a cool thing. I mean, who knew? Who knew that was a job?
You know what? My wife did when I quit my first job and went home and told her I was going to do it for a living. She figured out it was a job.
I like it. And we're going to give a shout out to Lisa.
Yeah.
I love Lisa Snarr. What an incredible lady. She's kind of let you be you and has allowed you to kind of test the waters. You've owned a trucking company. You've done so many different things. And all of this, at the end of the day, you're a phenomenal sculptor.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that.
So back up and tell me some stories about your rodeo days. Ones that we can tell on a podcast.
That's what I was just mulling over in my head. I was thinking to myself, nope, can't tell that one. Nope, can't tell that one. One of the things about rodeoing is it's not so much the people. I mean, not so much the rodeoing that makes it important as the people that you run with. And right now, one of my very best friends is a guy that I traveled with for years and years. He's a paramedic and a fire captain for Unified Fire, and he's right now, his name's Malone. Great firefighter and great friend. Right now he's battling cancer. Oh, no. Going through the treatments for that, so I want to give a shout out to Merrill. He's supported me in everything that I've done. Him and my wife have pushed me to be better, and I'll tell a story about Merrill.
There you go.
That's a good one.
He's not here to defend himself.
He is not here to defend himself. Merrill and I went down to Las Vegas every year at the national finals. They have a buck and stock sale, and you can enter it just like another rodeo. And it's when stock contractors bring their best bulls and their horses and things and put them up for sale. So you can enter it and ride, but then after the ride, they bid on the horses and bulls. Merrill had a bull called Twistoflex.
Twistoflex.
Big yellow bull. And along with the bull riding, there's a lot of bullfighters there that they're fighting the bulls, and they're basically looking for a job with the contractor, so they're showing their stuff as well. And this bull, he bucked Merrill off and then stopped standing on his shafts. So Merrill couldn't crawl away.
Yeah,
and he was
down
right in front of the bull, and this bull was just hooking the crud out of him. I mean, going to work on him, and these clowns were buzzing back and forth, slapping this bull, trying to get him off Merrill. And he'd look up at the clowns, and he'd look back at Merrill, and he'd go back to beating the tar out of him. And finally got away, but I would never let him live that one down. He crawled and couldn't get away from that bull. But yeah, that guy is all heart, Merrill. He's a great man.
Well, we wish him the best.
Yeah.
And dealing with what he's going through. So,
yes.
How many states did you visit with the rodeo?
You know, I didn't count, but the farthest east that I usually would go was Missouri and Arkansas, and then I'd go out to California, and I stayed away from the cold states as much as I could because I'm kind of a sissy when I get cold. So the Intermountain states out to California and the Southwest. I really prefer the Southwest.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so hard question. You didn't count the states. How many injuries did you get?
Didn't count those either.
Didn't count those either.
No.
Did you get some broken bones?
A few. I think I was really fortunate. I'd get stepped on and stuff, but I never really got. I got stepped on a lot, and I got 3 times I had a horn stuck in my mouth. And this is back before they wore vests and stuff.
Yeah.
That shows how old I am.
Yeah.
But
21.
21 with several years experience. I got jerked down on a couple of bulls and got the end of a horn stuck in my mouth in Tremont, and back then you wore a mouthpiece and a glove. You know, there used to be a joke that hockey players wear pads and a football player wears a helmet and a bull rider wears a glove. And so I was really fortunate to come out of it as well as I did. And I loved every minute of it. And it was kind of a part-time job for me. I was roofing houses at the time. And if I would have quit roofing houses, we would have starved. And if I would have quit riding bulls, we would have starved. And so it was, no matter if I was hurt or not, I still got up and went to work the next day roofing and just lived with it.
And you told me stories about being so sick that you shouldn't have gone to the rodeo, and you still went and rode. And Dan always reminds me of a movie that was called The Cowboy Way. Do you remember The Cowboy Way?
Yep.
His stories, if any of you know Dan, his stories are good stories. So,
and slivers of them are true, and slivers of them are not.
That's okay. Don't tell me.
It's like,
don't tell me. I don't want to know. So what age did you start rodeoing, and what year did you quit?
Well, I quit a lot later than I should have. Actually, I started rodeoing when I was in high school. And before that, I've always ridden horses and broke colts and things like that. I started rodeoing when I was in high school. And the last bulls I got on was after I had quit riding bulls. My son decided to ride bulls. Mm-hmm. And he went down to my brother-in-law's house, Shams Hawes. He's a local man here. He's my brother-in-law that had a pen of bucking bulls. And my son wanted to get on some to practice. And Shamus was a traveling partner of mine too, and he was a pretty sticky bull rider, Shamus was.
Wow.
And anyway, when we got there, Shamus asked my son, he says, "How many do you want to get on?" And Trinity says, "I don't know." And he's, "A few?" And he says, "Okay, this is the deal." He says, "For every one that you get on, your dad has to get on one." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I'm serious." He said, "If you want him to ride," he said, "you got to get on one too." I said, "All right." And he said, "But I get to pick him." So he was picking the bulls, and my son ran out of steam after 3. So I rode 3 that day, and I believe that was the last time that I got on, but I got all 3 of them rode, and I didn't get stepped on. Crewing, I don't know, it was mid-40s.
40, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You had a good run.
Yeah. You know, I there's days when I wake up in the morning, and especially in the spring and early July, you know, that's first part of the summer, I wake up and I think, man, I feel really good. I had to get on something. And I think, man, I feel really good. I ought to stay off of them.
You find out at our age that things hurt that you didn't know hurt, that you didn't even know you could hurt.
I know. What injuries have you had, John?
Well, a week ago I was cleaning out my patio and I picked up my smoker and I twisted with it and I threw my back out. The smoker wasn't heavy. And Tracy's still been making fun of me for that, but. So
that's a good lady.
She's a good lady.
Tracy Gossett deserves a medal.
She's earning her spot in heaven, and she says she'll come visit me.
Yeah.
So after riding bulls, how long after that did you head to Africa?
Actually, it was about the same time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I went to Africa in '98. In 1998, and was there we'd go over for 3 months and then back for a month, and I was there for not quite a year, back and forth. And then when I came back, I got on a couple of bulls when I came back, but my heart just wasn't in it anymore.
Yeah.
I started riding race horses for a guy exercising race horses out in Vernal, and I had started sculpting before I went to Africa, and then when I got back, I was in Vernal riding race horses and stuff like that, and I just could not make a living at it. They paid you $5 a ride to exercise them, and you got to ride a lot of race horses at $5 a ride to make a living. So finally, I came back out to Salt Lake and started working in the foundry and learning the foundry business along with the sculpting.
Yeah.
And so
which has really helped you in your sculpting to know both ends of the...
Yes, extremely. It's been extremely helpful to know the processes and the capabilities of bronze mostly. A lot of beginning sculptors will try to do things with their sculpture that isn't bronze friendly.
Yeah.
They do textures and stuff that are really, really not conducive to bronze.
Gotcha.
Not conducive to reproduction. The bronze process, you have to think that anything you do in clay, you've got to be able to reproduce with liquid metal. And so they do things that are really thin and fine, and the metal doesn't run that way. You have to know how bronze works and how it's going to weld back together and things to make it successful.
So that really ups your game.
Yes. I was really fortunate to learn from a sculptor that... he's one of the premier sculptors in the world. His name's Ed Ferraten, and he's taught me so much about good sculpture. And it's sad because a lot of the sculptors that are out there these days, they don't put in the time to study proper technique and stuff. They just because it's so readily available. When Ed started in this neighborhood, you might say, in Utah, there wasn't a foundry in the western United States.
Really?
No, he was shipping his stuff overseas. I think he shipped a piece to England or something to get it cast. And then he built a foundry in it. He dug out underneath his basement. He owned a church, an old Mormon church that he bought as his home in South Jordan. He dug out underneath the church and made a foundry underneath the church so he could cast his own stuff. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, really cool. And so it was really an investment in time for him to learn it, and to study it and become a great sculptor. And there's just not a lot of people that are willing to put in the years and years and years it takes to study sculpture.
Well, one thing that surprised me, not to be skipping ahead or anything, but I've spent some time at your studio. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at a sculpture that you've blown up to life do you call it life in a quarter when it's 8 feet, when a
Yeah.
Average person's 8 feet tall. So life in a quarter, you put together that face, but if you were to cut through the clay, you would see that you actually make the eye socket, the eyeball, you put everything into that clay as if it was actually the parts of the body to make that detail just come to life. And I think that's one of the things that shocked me the most about the detail. That detail's covered with finished product, but doing that really makes it so when you look into the eye of that sculpture, it's looking back at you.
Yeah, it's very important to sculpt from the inside out. That's one of the lessons that Ed taught me was you have to do the structure first, and that means the skeleton, and getting the bone ends right and the length of the bones right, and then laying the muscle on them, and it's a long process, and you have to study a lot to get it right. You know, you can there's a difference that you can see in people's work that don't study and stuff because the shirts just look like stuffed shirts.
Yeah.
Where in real life, that's not how shirts look. You can see the shape of an arm inside of a shirt, and you can see the shape of the bones and stuff that come to light. And without the investment in time, you can't hurry through it. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of studying, and that's where I find my joy is taking the time to do things right and study it and learn the processes and be fearless when it comes to if you make a mistake and something doesn't look right, being willing to cut the head off of a sculpture that you've just spent 3 months working on, being willing to cut the head off of it and move it because the neck didn't join up right. If you have to be bold and tear things up to refix them, that's what you have to do. Because every sculpture of mine, my goal is to make it my best work that I've done so far.
Yeah.
You know, every sculpture I intend to do the very best work I'm capable of doing at that point in my life.
And keep progressing.
Yeah.
You told me a story about your mother. You had done a Roosevelt piece.
Yeah.
And you asked her for her opinion, didn't you?
It was kind of, you asked her just because you knew she was going to give it to you anyway.
Yeah.
Bless her heart. Mom passed away in December.
I know.
And what a great lady. But it was my first monument, and it was a Teddy Roosevelt that went to Longmont, Colorado, and it was called Teddy Roosevelt the Conservationist. And I invited her out to look at it in the clay before I cast it. And she came out, she walked in, and now Mom was only probably maybe 5 foot tall, little bitty lady, and just as kind as anything. Well, she walked around it a few times and she says, "Dan, this is nice, but I know you can do better. I hope you're not finished with it." Well, I guess I'm not. And so I called my client back and I said, "I need a couple of more weeks." And he says, "Well, take all the time you need." You know, he's great about it. And so I went back and fixed the stuff that I knew was wrong, but I was scared to tear it apart. Yeah. It was my first monument. You know, it was the first big piece that I'd done. And there was stuff that was bothering me, but I thought it might slide by. But my mother would not tolerate me less than my best, I guess.
You gotta love the honesty of a mom, right?
Oh boy, yeah.
You're going, maybe I shouldn't ask advice next time.
Right. Yeah.
But I saw the piece, and what an amazing piece of work. I have been so amazed by what you do and the quality that you do and the care that you put into it. He's got a couple of books that are in your studio that you call your Bibles that talk about the anatomy and so that when you actually sculpt it, it's so lifelike that it's incredible.
You know, these tools, one of the books is called Modeling and Sculpting the Human Figure, and it's by Edward Lanterry. And Edward Lanterry was one of Rodin's professors. So this is a really old book. It's been reprinted a bunch of times. And I've bought that book several times and given it to other sculptors. Just given them a copy and told them, study this book. This is one of the most amazing books. It's like a master's class in sculpture. Yeah. But I'll go back to their studios, and it's on their shelf, and you can tell it's crisp and clean and never been used.
Yours is a little worn out.
I had to take my copy. I had to take my copy to the Tooele transcript, my 2 best books. I took them to the Tooele transcript, and they cut the back of them off and put the spiral binding on there because they were just breaking down.
Yeah.
And man, but I don't dare sculpt without them.
Well, and I think that's probably what sets your work apart, and that's why you're so popular at what you do.
Thank you. And I love portraiture, John. That's one of the things that I love doing is I love not only doing pieces that tell a story, but pieces about certain people that tell a story. I mean, we've got so many iconic figures in this world, and even if they're not famous iconic figures, for instance, the guy that we did Proud of, the piece that's in the Veterans Park, that gentleman's name was Robert Calder, and just a salt of the earth guy, and you would never know much about him if you didn't hear the stories from his daughter. Yeah. He was a farmer from Bear Lake, or from Garden City, but come to find out he was a World War II vet that just had amazing stories, and it was such an honor to do him, and it's really fulfilling to me to do portrait work. Yeah. Because of that, not just because of that piece, but because of it brings a realness to the people that we're sculpting.
Yeah. And in your studio you had some you had them framed. They were in charcoal. Mm-hmm. Pictures that you'd done of some people, and I was going back through some of my photos last night, looking back at visits to your studio, and those are such cool things to look at those pictures. So you brought up Proud. Let's talk about that a little bit. So the first time we met was in Melanie Herring's backyard.
Yes. In
2014. I love Melanie. And at that point in time, you were starting to kind of try to figure out how to get Proud. You had already done it.
Yeah.
It was already placed in Garden City, correct?
No, it got placed in 2015, I think.
2015. So about a year before, you were thinking they'd given you the go-ahead to place one more monument.
Yes.
And being a Tooele resident, you thought, man, that'd be cool to get it in Tooele, in our Veterans Park. And so that was the first time we met.
Right.
And then I think it was 2017 in September that Tracy and I represented the foundation, went to the state capitol for an evening called Thank You for Your Service, where they talked about, it was kind of a documentary that followed these 4 or 5 veterans in the Middle East, and then they come home after they've been discharged, and kind of outlined what a veteran can go through after they return home. And I remember thinking, we need to do better. We need to do better by our veterans. I mean, we ask some pretty hard things. We're great at asking, but in return, we need to back that up and take care of them. And they gave a statistic in that documentary that said, there's been veteran suicides back as far as to the infancy of the nation. But in Vietnam, they started to kind of track it and pay attention. In the Vietnam War, we lost 58,220 soldiers to combat death. 58,220. And if you've been to the Vietnam Wall, they have the replica in Layton, Utah, that is the replica of the Vietnam Wall. When you stand there and look at all of those names in fine print, it's staggering to think that we lost that many to war. But in this documentary, they mentioned that of just the Vietnam War veterans, we've lost 170,000 to suicide. So nearly 3 to 1 suicides to combat deaths. And we came home that night, Tracy and I did, and I couldn't get that out of my mind, and I kept thinking about it. And I think I probably called you the next morning.
You did.
And I said, let's do this thing. Let's push, because it had been unsuccessful in getting that monument placed up to that point. And I just said, I think we can do it. I think we can get it done. And so we spent that was the end of September, and we spent from the end of September till the end of December kind of trying to line out our plan. How are we going to do this and raise the money and get this statue placed? And we started January 1st. You sat in those meetings with us, and we said as a foundation, we really want to make this happen. And it's probably one of the things, probably one of the things I'm most proud of, that we got that through. We got it placed, and what an incredible journey it was. But you mentioned the soldier that you were contracted to sculpt. Mm-hmm. Tell a little bit about his story. So he served in World War II.
Yeah, he served in World War II. And his family knew that he'd served in World War II, but he didn't ever talk about the war when he came home. And when he was, I believe he was 94, and he knew he was not long for this world. He could tell he's on his last leg. And he called his daughter, who lives in Casper, and he asked her to come to the house in Garden City and bring a notepad. So she went over, and he says, I've got some things to tell you. And he started talking about the war and telling her war stories that she had no idea. But the guy he'd been shot 2 or 3 times and been evacuated and healed up, went back into the fight. And then they were clearing a building in the dark, and he fell down an elevator shaft.
And this was in France, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe it was in France. And he fell down an elevator shaft in the dark. He thought he was entering a hallway, and it was an open elevator shaft. And so he fell several floors down and broke his back and both legs. And went back they flew him out to England or something, and I believe it was England. And he healed up there and went back home to Garden City and started farming and never talked about it. Never told any of the stories about the war and stuff. And when his daughter came down to look at look at the monument, she was telling me some of these stories, and one of them that stuck out in my mind was he and one other soldier were stuck in a foxhole for like 10 days, and they were stuck in water up to their waist, and they had it was raining, and they had one wool blanket between the two of them, and they knew they were going to freeze to death. So every day they'd flip a coin and see if they were going to get out of the hole and get shot and killed, or if they were going to stay in the hole and freeze to death. And every day they decided to stay in the hole. And they were there for 10 days or something, an extremely long time.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
being
it's
pinned
crazy,
down and
crazy. And then help finally came and got him out. But when she came down to look at the piece for the first time, she walked in, and the only picture I had to work from was the picture that everybody has on their fireplace of their military service, was in their dress uniform and a smile and all this. That's the only picture I had of this guy to work from. And
looking his best.
Yeah, looking his best. And I knew that what I wanted to portray with him was not a defeated looking guy, but a guy that was war weary. These guys went through a ton, and I wanted to depict that. And anyway, she came down and looked at the piece, man. She was just crying when she came in, and she's walking around and looking at it. She said, how did you know to make his pants and boots so muddy and stuff? And I said, I just read a little about it and studied quite a bit about the war and where he was. And these are the stories that came to mind, was what this guy was going through. And then she started telling me stories about her dad. And boy, the piece just fit. It just really fit. And the reason I want to jump back to when we started pursuing getting that piece funded with you and getting it placed, I really believe that sometimes I'm way ahead of the curve on things. I do pieces and they're not ready to be placed yet. Mm-hmm. I started wanting to put that thing in Tooele, and the timing wasn't right. And I realized that the timing's just not right. It's not its turn. And so I had to leave it sit on a back burner for a while. You know, I've got a piece working right now that I sculpted it years and years ago, and now it feels like the time is coming for it. The timing's right for it, and it's a Jerry Sloan. You know, the coach, the Hall of Fame coach of the Utah Jazz. I sculpted it. If you remember when Jerry was coaching, and remember when him and Darren Williams had the fight?
Yep.
And that's when he walked out and quit the Jazz.
I remember it.
Funny story, and it could only happen to Dan Snarr. Okay, I sculpted this piece as a study. I started sculpting, it's 3 feet tall. And I started sculpting, and I thought, who am I going to sculpt? I want to sculpt somebody that there's a lot of pictures of, and I can study the way they move and everything. So months before that, I had started this sculpture, Jerry Sloan, and I went to one of the Jazz games where I got tickets right behind the bench, and I could watch him move and everything and really get a flavor of who he was, you know, not just on camera. So I sculpted this piece, and man, it turned out really good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite pieces.
Yes, I love that piece. But I sculpted it, and then when it was finished, that night that they had that game, me and my wife, we were going to a training the next day. We watched the first half of the game, and then we were going to bed. We had to go into Salt Lake for this training the next day, and I got up in the morning, and I hadn't watched the last half of the game. So I got up in the morning, and I told my son, I said, hey, go put that sculpture in the truck. I'm going to take it and drop it off to the Jazz. And he says, do they know you're coming? And I said, no, it'll be all right. I'll just show up. I'll just drop it off. And yeah, sounds like John Gossett, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, I'll just show up. It'll be all right. So he said, Dad, this is not a good idea. He said, just call them and let them know you're coming. And I said, you know, it'll be okay. And he said, I'm serious. He said, you really ought to call them. So I call, and the lady that answered the phone, I says, yeah, I've got this sculpture of Jerry Sloan that I'd like to drop off and let you guys look at. And she says, who told you to call? And I said, well, my son did, but he's kind of a nobody.
You never heard of him.
I'm just going to drop it off and leave it there for a couple of days. I've got this training to do, and I'll pick it up when I'm done. And she said, oh, heck no. I am not dealing with this. And she calls the security guy and transfers my call to him. And he says, what do you have? And I told him, I've got this statue of Jerry Sloan that I want to drop off and let you look at. And, you know, I'd like to maybe sell it to you and all this. And he says, oh, no. He says, you even show up at this building and I'll have you arrested. He says, do not come here. And I'm thinking, wow, why with all the hostility?
Who doesn't love Jerry?
Yeah, and so I thought, well, I'm kind of in a hurry. I got to go to this training. So I left it home and I didn't take it to him. Well, then riding into town, I hear this story about what went on, and it hadn't even hit the news that he had quit yet. And so the security people are saying, how in the world did he know this? You know, stuff. And I tried a little bit to get it in front of the Millers and stuff then, but it just didn't feel like the right time. There were some hard feelings going on within the Jazz organization and stuff. And it's just not been the right time. I've got it sculpted. It's in the mold. You know, I've already made a mold of it and everything, and it's a wonderful piece. And I'm mature enough to know that it was the right thing for me to let it sit.
Yeah.
You know, to let it sit for a while. And now with Coach Sloan's health declining and stuff, good chance that it may get placed. You know, I would love to see it placed. I think the timing's right for it. I don't think there's ever been a better coach in my mind.
No,
you know,
not at all.
Just a rock solid coach.
I think it was a year or so ago, Brian Russell, one of the Jazz players, was saying we need to place one because outside the Vivant Smart Home Arena, they've got the Mailman and John Stockton statues, and I think Brian Russell was pushing to get one of Coach out there as well in that courtyard, and your piece is phenomenal in the fact that you can walk into your studio, turn the corner, and from across the room, just from the posture of that statue, know that it's Coach.
Yeah. You didn't see it when it was in the clay before I started it in the mold, huh?
Yeah, I think I did. I saw it in the clay, and then the last time I saw it, you had just covered it in rubber to make the mold.
That's right.
It's a beautiful piece, and our prayers are with Coach
Yes.
because he's going through some rough times right
Boy,
now.
that is hard time.
I think 2 days ago, Karl Malone said to pray for Coach Sloan, and so our hearts are with him. He's a part of Utah.
Yes.
He will
What an
always,
icon.
it doesn't matter if he's wearing a John Deere hat and he misses
Yeah.
his home. He's all Utah as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
And
what a leader.
oh, what a great guy. I remember walking into, I think it was like the Olive Garden. We went into the Olive Garden and sat in the booth next to Jerry and his wife, and he's a big man.
Yeah.
You get that close to him, you realize what a big man he is, and
Yeah.
he's got a big heart. And my favorite things of watching the Jazz games back in the day was he always had the backs of his players, and he
Yes.
would take it to the refs, and he'd say, "No, hey." And he'd get in there, and they'd eject him from the game, and the Jazz would always win after he was
Yeah.
ejected from the game because they
Yeah.
knew that he had their back, and
Yeah.
what a good guy.
Yeah.
I want to see that placed. I want to see that
Yeah.
actually come to be. That would be such a gift for Utah to have that.
I would love to have
So
that
if you're watching this podcast and you've
Yep.
got any connections with the Millers, you want to
Yeah.
get in touch with Dan Snarr. What's your website? Just while we're thinking.
DanSnarr.com.
Wow,
Complicated.
that is
I had to make it easy so I could remember how to spell it.
DanSnarr.com. You
Yeah.
did have some pictures of it on there, didn't you?
Yeah, I've got pictures on there.
So if you're interested in seeing Coach's, it was in clay, I think, in your
Yeah.
pictures. But
Yeah, the pictures are in clay.
visit dansnarr.com and you can see that sculpture of Coach Sloan.
Yeah.
So back to the Proud statue. Mm-hmm. We placed it. It was unveiled on Veterans Day, and I don't think I've driven past that park one time that I haven't turned and looked past it. I drive past it every day, and I'm really proud that
Yes.
we as a community made that happen. And when I say we, I mean there were multiple people that
there
donated money, made that happen, and got it in the park. And it's a commanding piece because it's looking directly at the American flag from across the park, and that pedestal is 6 feet tall, and the statue is
The statue's 12.
12 feet tall
Yep.
with the flag, and
Yep.
so it's an 18-foot piece.
Yeah.
And when we put that in, my thought was we want to be able to find these veterans that are struggling, and we want to be able to have resources that they can come to that statue, see plaques on the pedestal, and know where to turn. Because I think a lot of the problems we have after our veterans come home is not knowing where to get the help,
Right.
not knowing what resources are available and where to turn. And the VA does some amazing things, but I think that gets a little intimidating to think I'm going to go sit at the VA all day and hope that I can get put in the right direction. And so I've been very happy with what has happened. And there's been days when I've had someone in town call and say, hey, there looks like there's a struggling veteran down at the statue. You might want to go down there. And I've taken those trips down and talked to them, and I've had some really good experiences with going down and visiting with people at the park, and I can't thank you enough because I don't think that you got enough credit for the fact that you made that happen. You did that. You did it on your own as far as making that happen, and I appreciate that. As far as
I have to argue with you on that, John. I made the statue and was so honored to be a part of it. But you and other members of the community, I cannot even describe what it's like as an artist to have a whole community embrace your work and want it in their community enough to go out. We had that committee, and you were in charge of it, that went out and talked to business owners and everything else and raised the funding for it. And to see the communities, their involvement in it, and that's the only word I can think of is the way they embraced the whole project and just really took it on. It was I got the easy part of it,
Well, I'll tell you what, that day, I will never forget the unveiling of that. And nobody saw, probably most of the people didn't see you and me out there with a crane getting that thing set up on the pedestal the day before. They probably thought, man, they probably crawled in a crew. There was you, me, and a handful of people, and we were out there making it happen. But I am so grateful that you brought that idea to our community and that we're the recipients of it, because that has forever changed the face of the park and made it a special place. I think I mentioned to you, so my dad was retired Army, but I remember when they put the pergolas in at the park, my dad says, man, that's going to be a nice park. It needs a big piece of a big statue or something in that park until it has that. And so we placed it 3 years after my dad passed away. And I thought, finally give him what it was 3 years after. Wow. And I was so proud thinking, he's got to be looking down thinking, how cool is that we finally did it. And it was a big deal. And then I remember going into that, to Veterans Day, we were on the radio. We did some radio things, and we got to kind of tell our story. And man, it was a cool deal.
It was a really cool deal, and it was really cool that you have friends that like Jamie Lee Thurston and J. Marc Bailey and the talent that came in to support the project.
Wasn't that cool?
Yeah,
and so J. Marc Bailey actually recut Some Gave All, an old Billy Ray Cyrus song, and donated all the money that he made from selling that on iTunes and things to help make that statue happen. And I mean, there was some cool things. We got to do some cool stuff.
Yeah, it was a great experience. So, John, tell us about what's going on with the foundation. Enough about me. He's got a little time left here. Let's hear about the foundation.
The foundation is doing great. And, we're doing the podcast now. We're doing a few things. This whole COVID-19 thing has kind of spun us around and made us cancel a few things. You were going to come walk to Windover with us. Yeah. Do the walk to Windover, the 100-mile walk. And we were unable to have that happen. So I was a little bit bummed about that. And, hang on. Isn't that rude to have something popping up on your phone?
What's popping up on your phone?
Well,
You're not Facebooking here, are you?
No, I would never Facebook while we're talking.
That's a good thing.
Because you and I have too much fun.
Facebook Live.
But the foundation's going well. Good. And, one thing I wanted to tell, and it kind of got me sidetracked. We talked about your notepad and losing our track.
Yep, this is my security blanket. I have to have that along with me all the time.
Well, would you mind if I took this call?
No, go right ahead.
This is kind of weird. I've never done... Sorry, guys, if you're listening to this.
And they are listening to this, John.
Hello?
Hey, what are you up to?
Oh, not much, man. What are you doing?
I'm weathering out a huge rainstorm sitting by the fire.
Oh, where are you?
I'm in North Carolina tonight.
You're in North Carolina tonight? Oh, man. You're never going to guess. You're never going to guess what I'm doing right now.
What's that?
His laundry.
I'm recording a podcast right as we speak.
You're doing some laundry? Who's that?
Don't you recognize that voice? This is the baddest bull rider you ever met.
Woo! That must be Dan Snarr then.
Whoa, that is.
How much did he pay you? Did
he? Dan doesn't know who we're talking to, do you?
J. Marc.
Hey, he does know.
Yeah.
Check that out.
Jay, I hear you have an album coming out.
I do, buddy.
Awesome.
I'm really excited about it.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We got the wind blowing out here pretty hard. I guess they're tipping semis over right and left. But other than that, I'm inside, so I'm fine.
We're sitting in the beautiful GTM Builders home. The model home.
Nice. Well, we've had crazy storms out here today, like tons of rain. The river down below the house here is like totally flooded out, and I mean it's crazy.
Wow,
that is nuts. Well, we were just talking about you right before you called. We were talking about Gosh, we did radio shows. We were on Mark Shirtliff and Ted McBride, and we're doing radio shows, the three of us, and here you call right as we're doing a podcast. How cool is that?
Yeah.
There you go, man. Well, you know, I'm like a bad penny. I just kind of always show up.
That's the best kind.
Well, hey, tell us what you got going on. You had some special news coming up.
I do. Yeah, so the last 6 months to a year have been really crazy. And I signed a deal with a new artist promotion company in Nashville. And I've been doing a lot of recording there. I've got a new album. It's actually out right now. We've got a new song coming out to radio in a few weeks, which is super fun. And the guys I'm working with are incredible. I don't know if you guys know who Brent Mason is, but he's probably recorded, 200 of the last #1 hits out there. He does all of George Strait's work for him and just, name after name after name. But so just great guys in the studio. My producer is Buddy Hyatt. He played keyboard and keys and did vocals for Toto for a long time. And he's amazing. But we just got some great guys in the studio that, you go in and these songs that I've written, I'm like, me and my acoustic guitar, I'm sitting there jamming them out and hearing them. And it's like, I think this is good and stuff like that. And you walk in there with those guys and it's like, wow, holy cow, what just happened,
Yeah, you sent some videos to me as you were in the studio recording, and I thought, that's got to be the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Man, it's amazing. So much freedom with those guys. I mean, you literally anything you can dream, think, you can hum a tune to them, and the next thing you know, it sounds like it's been on the radio for 50 years. So, these guys are just super cool. So.
Well, and I was telling Dan the other day that you had some rodeo songs coming up.
I do.
You got a song called "Hang On" that I actually was listening to it on the way over here tonight. I got to play that for Dan after we're done recording.
That's actually the title of the album, is "Hang On a Little Longer." And that song, it was funny because I went over to Nashville to start working on all this stuff, and I was working with Britt and Cameron, who for the longest time was in a duo situation with another guy, a guitar player, and that he's currently playing lead guitar for Jason Aldean.
Nice.
And has been doing that for a long time. But Britton's just super talented, a really great writer. And we sat down in the his studio one day, and we're like, okay, so I've got all this stuff. We've got to sort through all this material and get it ready to go and get it ready for the studio. He's like, you know what? Why don't we bag that? Let's just write something new. And I'm like, what? So we came on with "Hang On a Little Longer."
Cool.
You gotta make it 8 seconds. You gotta hear the bell ring.
Yep.
Dan knows a little something about that.
Yeah, he does. So I have a surprise for y'all.
Oh, you got a surprise for us?
I'm going to introduce you to somebody who I've been working with. His name is Russ Stallons. And this guy grew up in the rodeo circuit. His niece has won, I think, state 2, maybe, I might be wrong, 2-3 years in a row in barrel racing in Kentucky. And he's got, I'm not kidding, he's got some killer music coming out. I've been working with him. I've been co-writing with him. We've produced some of his stuff. You can get some of it on YouTube. But he has 2 songs that we just did in Nashville a couple weeks ago that are off the charts, that are just super amazing. But he's also been a preacher for a long time and actually decided to go into songwriting and becoming an artist. He's also had a lot of experience in working with a lot of soldiers with PTSD. So,
cool.
Yeah, he'll definitely relate with you guys on the rodeo side of things. Do you guys mind if I dial him in?
Oh, do it.
Go right ahead.
All right, man. Hold on one sec here.
Who knew?
Who knew?
This reminds me of sitting in the studio with
Did you
Mark
really
Shirley.
text him and say, "Call me quick"?
No, he was texting me.
Awesome.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
All right, John, we got you.
Hey, I'm here.
Dan,
Hi.
hey man, you got Russ. Russ, you with us? Yes, sir. I'm right here.
How are you, sir?
Listen, I'm doing good.
Good.
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to
You
meet
too.
you.
So, Russ, I want to introduce you to both John and Dan. John and I have been friends since the first grade. So, I mean, that was only 2 years ago.
Well, we called that our senior year.
Over and over and over.
So I was going to tell you guys, I met Russ playing the Commodore in Nashville, which is a singer-songwriter venue. And I sat there in the audience and listened to him play. And man, I'm telling you, he sings from a place of authenticity. And I got super excited about it to the point that I actually introduced him to my production team with Buddy Hyatt and those guys. And he's got 4 songs going right now. He's got another one he's going to be recording on the 28th of May. But he also has a history in rodeo, and his family grew up doing that too. And in addition to that, Russ, I told him that you had, obviously you had been a minister and stuff, and had some experience with, some of our veterans and stuff like that have suffered from PTSD.
Yeah, I sure have, and then had a lot of friends too, just friends that were in the military as well, because where I live here in Kentucky is right beside of Fort Campbell, 101st Airborne. So being in close proximity to that, I'm just running into a lot of guys that deal with those things.
And I told Russ about what we'd done with the statue that Dan sculpted with Proud, and just what an amazing experience that was. And I just thought it was a great connection to get you guys all, talking and connected. And I'm a little bit hopeful that we might get Russ out there for a concert sometime.
We'd like that.
Uh-oh.
We like
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we've got Jay to come out here. You come out here how many times and played in Tooele? 3?
I've come out a couple times. Before I moved out east, we used to play there a lot. We had a great time there, but John's had me out there a couple times.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, and as we come into Memorial Day, it's something that kind of is always on our minds, is our men and women that are fighting for our freedoms, and the ones that have come home, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of once they're home. And so we were really lucky. I was saying just a minute ago to Dan, we're so lucky to have him to do that beautiful sculpture, and to actually place the very first monument in the United States that addresses veteran suicide. I mean, that's one of the proudest things that I can even think of that we've accomplished as a foundation, and it's going to stand the test of time. That's going to be there for my kids, my grandkids, and so on, to go on and on in that park. And what a beautiful piece of art that is.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Is there? I guess I can probably see a picture because I've never seen it. Is there a way you just Google it and there would be a photo of it somewhere?
Well, I'll tell you what. On our YouTube channel, J. Marc was kind enough to actually record the unveiling of the whole ceremony, and it's been professionally recorded, and you can hear the sound really well on Life's Worth Living Foundation's YouTube channel. You can actually watch it. We were lucky enough to have people. We had a 1-star general there. We had people from the governor's office. We had commander of Tooele Army Depot. Just the list goes on and on. Senators, representatives, and it was a beautiful day. We had a flyover, and all of that's been recorded and is available on our YouTube channel. So yeah, I hope you'll take a look at it.
You can also see it on my website.
Oh yeah, you can also see it on dansnarr.com.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check that out.
Oh, we'd love it. Well, we really appreciate you guys calling in. That was a surprise. I was talking to.
Yeah, man. Well, I wanted Russ. I told Russ that I wanted him to meet you and talk to you and stuff like that. So the fact that Dan's there and we're doing the podcast and stuff like that's pretty dang cool.
Yeah. Timing is everything, you know.
Dan and I don't get together too often because when we do, we get in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny when.
Now, did I understand J. Mart right? Dan used to ride bulls, or still does ride bulls?
Oh no, I used to. I don't anymore. I'm pushing 57 years old. I'm way too old for that now.
He just gave it up. He told me he was 21 a little while ago. Now he's admitting 57.
I'm 21 with 36 years experience.
Yeah. Well, I did too, and I gave that up for marriage, and I think marriage has been rougher. No, I'm just kidding.
No, Russ has got a fantastic wife. His wife Tanya is amazing. She's a sweet spirit.
That's awesome.
Good.
But I rodeoed in college at Murray State University.
Cool.
And that's been 30 years ago, you know. But we had a good time.
What was your event?
I rode bulls.
Really? And how old are you?
I am 48. I'll be 49 next month.
Well, awesome. I've got a couple of years on you, but I used to go back to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and back through Missouri and that country back there. I'd make one run that far east every year and make it last as long as the money would.
Yeah. Our college was in the Ozark region of the college rodeo, and we covered Kentucky, Tennessee, University of Tennessee at Martin. Then there's Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana. There's Monroe, Louisiana, and Alabama. And that's the majority of where we covered. Most of everything was east. About Poto, Oklahoma was as far west as we would go. Within our region,
Right. So on that circuit, you probably had to get on a bunch of them Kia swamp bulls, didn't you? There was a contractor out here that went back there, and he brought back a whole truckload of Kia swamp bulls, and these things were tall, lanky, and didn't know what a fence was, and they would jump fence after fence after fence, and we were getting on them as a practice pen. He wanted to see if they were going to buck, so he'd get a bunch of us dingbats down there to try anything that he'd bring. He'd let you get on them for free, so we'd get on them as much as we could. And my goodness, them things could jump. They were like deer. They would jump out of the arena, and finally he had to get rid of them because he was spending so much time chasing the bulls out through the parking lot.
Yeah. Did they buck good and spin, or did they kind of trash you?
They were kind of trashy, but they were dang sure challenging just because of the air they get. They'd jump and roll. And
I guess you never knew what they were going to do, right?
Oh man, yeah. And he hadn't had them long enough to tip their horns yet, so they were pretty sharp. He was. That was Bud Kirby, and I don't know if you ever heard of the Bar T Down deal at Swanee Kirby. He used to have a bunch go to the NFR every year, and Bud was his son. And Bud, he took no prisoners. It was like, don't weaken, son. He said, get on and shake your face. Don't weaken. Yeah. If you could hang with the Kirbys for very long, by gosh, you earned it.
I'll tell you, Dan's the toughest guy I've ever met.
Oh, geez.
He's tough. He ain't all that big. He thinks he's bigger than he is, but I'll tell you what, that's the one guy I'm not ever going to piss off.
You know what? He's feeding you so full of baloney.
There's been a couple of times where we actually went out and there were some veterans that were struggling. We went out and did all-nighters.
Yeah.
And
yep.
I knew that if we needed to get out there and if things got ugly, Dan would take care of me. I didn't have to worry about about anything. So he's a good man, I'll tell you.
Yeah, look forward to meeting you, Russ.
Yeah, we got to
Yes,
get you out to Utah.
All right. Sounds great.
We'll take you out for some good Mexican food.
There you go.
That sounds good. I love Mexican.
Dan, he's got a song called "Tell Me Something Good" that I'm telling you, it's a straight up. For me, when I heard it and we got him in the studio on it, I'm like, Chris Ledoux would be so proud of that if he heard that right now. And when we hang up and stuff like that, we'll have to get you the link for that because I think you guys really enjoy it.
Oh, I'd love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, shoot me the link and I'll get that shared over to Dan.
Yeah, do.
Well, guys,
I'll for sure do it.
we sure appreciate you guys for calling in and Jay, let's kind of go down the line. So, how do people find you?
Well, I think the best thing to do right now is just go to jmarcbailey.com, and it's Mark with a C. So it's just jmarcbailey.com. That's got the new album there. There's a link up on top that says "Hang On," and right now it's a free download for a little while because of the COVID stuff that's been going on. We actually were going to release the first single back in March, late February.
Oh, February.
Yeah, late February, early March, but that's been pushed a little bit. And so, in the meantime, we want to get the album out there and just kind of let everybody get a preview of it and hear it. And so it's out there if you go there on the website. And then hopefully by June 1st is kind of what we're talking about. We'll start to see I Can't Stop You hit most of the Billboard stations and stuff like that, the influencer stations, and we're way excited about that. So,
and I Can't Stop You. You've been playing that for a while, and I that's one of my favorite songs you do.
I have, and finally I got some guys that could record it and do it justice.
Well, tell everybody who wrote that.
Yeah, Jeffrey Steele wrote it. I don't know if you've heard the song. What Hurts the Most? Rascal Flatts kicked that out. Jeffrey Steele's got a slew. The first time I heard, he's got crazy amounts. The first time I heard him play, it's been quite a while ago, and I heard him at Ferd and Lindsley in Nashville. And I went in there. I didn't know who he was. I didn't realize that he was the lead singer for Boy Howdy back in the day. And I went in and I started listening to him. I looked at my sister and I'm like, man, why is he singing everybody else's songs? And Brett Manning, who was doing some vocal coaching with us at the time, he's like, bro, he wrote all these.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's Brooks and Dunn, Montgomery Gentry, Rascal Flatts.
Wow.
I mean, he had all those hits out there. And I've been holding on to I Can't Stop You for a long time because I just have always loved the song, but I've never been able to get it recorded in a format that actually did the song justice, and finally we got it. So I was really excited about that.
Well, and Jeffrey still has my hair.
Yeah, dude.
I wondered where it went.
I'm so jealous every time I see him. I'm like, man, jeez, you guys got my hair.
Yeah.
I got the right color. It's just not long enough yet.
He's a pretty dude, that's for sure.
Well, you guys are awesome. Well,
we'll hook up with you after, and we'll get you some links to all the stuff. So
perfect.
Yeah, dude.
Hey, and I appreciate you stopping in for the little reunion.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and I want to say something. I want to tell you guys something you probably already know. J. Marc Bailey is one of the finest human beings that I've run across in a long time.
Oh, man, brother.
He has been so good to me. And I'm sure you guys have had the same experience with him, but man, he's just been a big help to me. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate it.
He's the real deal, for sure. And I think that's what country music's been missing a little bit. We finally got somebody that's the real deal again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. I appreciate it, guys, but I'll tell you what. I mean, when I hear guys like Russ sing in the environment that we heard him in, I'm telling you, you're going to hear him on the radio.
I can't wait to hear it. You send me that link.
You're going to hear him. That's all there is to it.
Well, dude, it's been a pleasure, and it was great to meet you. And I can't wait to hear the link. Dan and I will check it out right after.
Yep.
All right, well, you guys take it easy, man.
Okay.
You too.
Yes, it was great meeting you guys as well.
You too.
All righty.
You guys stay
Take
safe.
care, guys.
We'll talk soon.
All righty.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
It was so funny. As we were getting over here tonight, ready to record, he called me as I was setting up the lights and the camera and everything. And I said, I could chat for a minute, but I got to go because you never get a guess who we're having on the podcast tonight. And he goes, who? And I said, Dan Snarr. He goes, I love that guy. He goes, I love that guy. He's getting ready. J. Marc is getting ready to fly to Texas in the next couple of weeks to pick up his tour bus.
Oh, cool.
And he's getting ready. So, yeah, he had a little delay in getting that album off the ground just because he was to release at the end of February. Then it was looking March, and then everything fell apart in March, and we are where we are. So,
Yeah.
super stoked for him and
What a
everything.
tough field, too. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah. He does. If anybody deserves it, he deserves it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, when we were getting ready to do the statue, he remade Some Gave All, and you can find that I think on Life's Worth Living's YouTube channel. You can find it on iTunes and stuff. So check him out for sure. And Dan, I can't thank you enough for your friendship.
You know what, John? It goes both ways.
You're a good guy.
And there's something that you got to know about John. Whenever
Don't tell
John and
him.
I call one another, we have a code. It's if we're on speakerphone, I always call John and I say, John, this is Dan Snarr calling. And if he calls and he's on speakerphone, he says, Dan, this is John speaking. So we know
when to tone it down.
we know that our wives will hang us if we
I'll tell you what. And I ran into your wife at the grocery store, and we sat and talked for a while. But I'll tell you what, I love her. She is an amazing lady. You are a lucky man.
Yes, I am.
There's not many women that could put up with you, Dan.
You know what? That she has got courage like nobody's business. I've come home and told her, honey, I just quit my job. And she says, really, what are you going to do? I'm going to braid bull ropes. She says, I didn't know you knew how to do that. I don't, but I think I can figure it out.
Well, I'll tell you what, she has allowed you to do some things that, you have been able to try a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And you've been good at it.
That's what happens when you can't hold a job, John.
Whatever.
You
Whatever.
figure it out.
Whatever. Well, if anybody is out there looking to have a sculpture done, a piece done, even if it's a bust or a monument, Dan is the guy to go to. You'll not meet a person with a better heart. You'll not meet a more talented sculptor. Somebody that puts 110% into everything that they do. And so if you're in the market, if you're looking, it doesn't matter where you're located. I know we're being listened to in 10 countries around the world.
Are you kidding? You didn't tell me that before I came here.
I knew you wouldn't come if I told you that. So, with 10 countries around the world, and we've been charting on Apple on their podcast.
You said you had 3 listeners.
Well, I do. 3 and a bunch more.
Me, you, and Tracy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're anywhere, check out dansnarr.com. See what he has to offer. If you're connected with the Miller Group in any way, he does have an amazing sculpture of Jerry Sloan, Coach Jerry, and it doesn't look like we're going to have Coach Jerry with us much longer. His days are getting close to the end, and we love Jerry Sloan. We love what he did for Utah as a state, what he did for the Utah Jazz. We love the Utah Jazz. And, that's the cool thing about the Millers is they've told us that's their gift to Utah, and that's never going to leave. And so we've been blessed far beyond anything because of Larry Miller and his family. And so, if you've got a connection there, you might throw a bug in their ear that this sculpture is ready to go. It's ready for enlargement and ready to be cast. And the city of Tooele can't thank you enough for everything you've done for them and in making that possible. So if you get a chance, check that out on our YouTube channel, Life's Worth Living channel. So tonight's kind of just been a fun episode.
I got one more thing to say, and equally, John, you mean as much to me as it goes both ways. What a great individual we have sitting here. He's done so much for this community, and you've probably heard that before, but this is a wonderful foundation that does good, so much good for our community. Wow. So we really appreciate John.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate the listeners. If you, I don't know what brought us together tonight, but if you're here and you're listening and you're struggling, please reach out to the Lifeline. Call 1-800-273-8255. Talk to somebody. Don't hold those thoughts and feelings inside, because you know what? Connection is what matters in life, and those relationships you have and those connections with people care. Reach out to them. Talk to somebody. Tell them how you're feeling. But if you don't have somebody that you can reach out to, call the Lifeline. They're there to listen. They're there to talk. And I want to thank our military, all the branches of our military, for our servicemen and women as we come into Memorial Day. We can't thank you enough for what you've done for us. We love our military. We live in a military town, and we're so grateful for them. So if you're a veteran, just know how much you're cared about and how much you're loved and respected, and thank you for your service. And from the Life's Worth Living Foundation, please hit subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. That helps it keep it current in front of people. People will see this podcast. If you've got a veteran you want to share these stories with, go ahead and share this podcast. Share it and get it out in front of people. Again, thank you to GTM Builders and A. Warner Homes Real Estate for their sponsorship of this, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.